Proving yourself to the wrong people is the most exhausting battle with no prize, and you have been fighting it for too long. Not because you were weak, because you were never the problem. The problem was believing that the right response could close the mouth of someone who had already decided before you opened yours. That the correct argument could reach a conclusion that was constructed before your arrival. That if the case was made clearly enough, precisely enough, patiently enough, the doubt would dissolve and the permission would finally come. Stop. That permission was never under construction. The doubt was never open to evidence. The closed door was not waiting for the right knock. The decision was already made, and every second spent building a case for an audience with no intention of deliberating is a second your future did not receive, is a second the version of you still being built sat waiting with the materials untouched, is a second the climb did not move.
How long have you been spending that second? Not 1 second. How many of them stacked into hours, hours into days, days into the specific and repeating cost of defending what did not require a defense to remain true? Your direction did not require their agreement to be right. Your capacity did not require their belief to be real. Your arrival does not require their acknowledgement to be the arrival. But the energy went toward them anyway, toward the defense, toward the correction, toward the explanation extended to the ones who received it and used it as confirmation that access was still available, that the door was still open, that a reaction could still be produced, that the power was still theirs to exercise. The moment the response stopped, the power stopped. Completely. Not reduced, stopped. Because the only power an opinion ever carried was the power given to it in the act of receiving it as something requiring a reply. Words only carry weight when the scale is handed over willingly. The moment the scale is withheld, the words are exactly what words are: sound, delivered to someone who stopped accepting the delivery.
The ones who matter never needed to tear you down. Let that settle into every layer. The ones who built anything real were not found in the commentary about what you were building. The ones who understood the cost of the climb were not the ones calling down from the bottom, suggesting the route was wrong. The ones who were actually in the work did not have the surplus to spend on the mocking. Real ones do not tear down. Real ones are too busy, too occupied with their own climb to catalog the flaws in yours, too invested in their own construction to maintain an active interest in your collapse. The presence of sustained mockery is not a statement about the one being mocked. It is a complete accounting of the one doing the mocking, of what is not being built, of what has run out of forward direction, of what turned the attention outward because the inward direction became too uncomfortable to maintain. Their obsession is the proof. Receive it exactly that way, not with gratitude, not with acknowledgement, as data, cold and usable. Progress confirmed, direction validated. Keep moving. What would exist if every second that went toward the defense had gone directly to the build? Name the specific thing, the exact project, the exact distance covered, the exact version of what is being built that would already be further along if the energy had never been redirected. That gap, that specific and measurable gap between where the arrival point is now and where it would be if the commentary had never received a single unit of resources, that gap is the full cost of the attention given. Not the pain of it, not the emotional weight of hearing it, the functional cost, in time, in distance, in the compounded output of every hour that went sideways instead of forward. The ones who mock the journey never finish their own, and neither does the one who spends the journey responding to the mocking. This is the trap, not the noise, the response to the noise. The belief that if the response is finally right enough, final enough, complete enough, the noise will stop and the climb can resume at full pace. The noise does not stop because the response landed correctly. The noise stops because the response stopped arriving, because the door was shut, because the access was revoked, completely, without announcement, without ceremony, without a final statement explaining why the door is closing, just closed.
And closing the door is not indifference arrived at by accident. Closing the door is a skill, constructed deliberately, through the repeated decision to give the next moment to the work instead of the commentary about the work. Through the discipline of keeping the eyes forward when everything designed to turn them was operating at full volume. Through the accumulation of days where the noise rose and the energy went to the climb anyway. Not because the noise was quiet, not because it stopped hurting, because the destination is larger than every voice positioned between here and there. Unbothered is not a mood. Unbothered is not the absence of feeling. Unbothered is the decision made repeatedly, under pressure, at volume, in the specific moments when the reaction was the easier and more available option. The decision to withhold the reaction is the decision to withhold the control, and that decision compounds every time it is made. Every time the noise rose and the response did not come. Every time the commentary landed and the next action went directly to the build. The compounding accelerated, the distance grew, the reach of the noise shortened. Until the climb was operating in a range the commentary could no longer access, until the spaces moved into were spaces too far forward for the voices behind to follow. Move into spaces they cannot follow. That is the direction. Not away from them, not in reaction to them. Forward, into the next level of the build, into the distance the work is pointing, into the arrival that does not require a single one of them to be present for the confirmation. Because the confirmation does not come from them. The confirmation comes from the result. Only from the result. And the result is built from the hours, from the decisions made in the hours, from what those decisions were aimed at. Every hour aimed at the commentary is an hour not aimed at the result. Every resource directed at the doubt is a resource not directed at the destination. The math is that clean. The cost is that exact. How many results were delayed by the defense? How many arrivals were pushed back by the seconds given to the ones who were never invested in the arrival? That is not guilt. That is the full accounting. Because the full accounting is the only thing that makes the next decision different. The next decision that arrives the moment the commentary rises and the hands reach for the response and the question lands, where does this resource go? Backward into the noise or forward into the build? Every single time, the same question with the same answer for someone who has measured the full cost of the wrong choice.
The darkest point of this was not the volume. The darkest point was the moment the commentary found what it was aimed at, when it did not stay external, when the words crossed the threshold and reached the version of the doubt that was already present before the words arrived, when the external voice found the internal one,
and for a specific and extended period of time became indistinguishable from it. You heard them saying you would not finish, and the part of you that was already uncertain heard it as confirmation rather than as noise. That is the actual weapon, not the volume, the precision, the ability to locate the existing crack and speak directly into it, to arrive at the exact hour the reserves were lowest, to find the question already present and amplify it without permission. And you are still climbing, which means the weapon did not land fatally, which means the crack did not become the fracture, which means the hours that followed that moment did not stop. They continued, at cost, with weight added that was not there before, but continued. Every step taken with that weight is a step that required more than the step before it, and every step that required more built more. The hardest points on the route are the points that expand what can be carried. The hits designed to end the climb are the same hits that permanently enlarge the capacity for it. That is not comfort. That is the observable result of staying in the climb at the exact moment every signal said the climb was over. What does it cost to keep proving yourself? Not the emotional cost first, the functional cost, the specific and repeating daily cost of maintaining the defense, of staying available to the commentary, of keeping the door open enough that the knocking still reaches you and still produces a response. Every second of that maintenance is a second of debt. Debt owed to the work, debt owed to the build, debt owed to the version of the arrival that was supposed to receive those resources and built less because it received less. The debt does not announce itself per transaction. The debt accumulates quietly, in increments, day by day, until the distance to the destination is larger than it should be by the exact measure of everything given away to the commentary that was never going to be resolved. Stop feeding what should be starved. Not tomorrow, not after one more correction to one more mischaracterization, not after the record has been set straight one final time. The record is not the point. The arrival is the point, and the arrival is fed or it is starved based on what receives the resource. That decision is made in every moment the noise presents an alternative and a choice. Choose the build every time, without exception, without condition, every time. The greatest version of you, the ones who doubted, believed was impossible, built entirely without their permission, without their belief as the fuel source, without their acknowledgement as the destination. Built. Because the direction was right before they weighed in and remained right after. Because the work was valid before the commentary arrived on it and remained valid after. Because what is true about the destination does not require a single external confirmation to remain true. The doubt never had authority over the direction. The doubt was handed authority. Every time the response went to the commentary, every time the case was made, every time the defense was filed, every time the noise was treated as something requiring an answer. The authority was handed over, willingly, repeatedly, with the best intention of resolving it permanently, and it was not permanent, because the resolution was never available from the sources being engaged. The resolution was always and only available from one direction, the result. Let the outcome close every mouth that the explanation never could, not as a strategy aimed at the doubt, as the natural consequence of choosing the build over every alternative the noise presented. The higher the climb goes, the louder the voices below. That is the mechanism, not exception, not coincidence. Mechanism. because the height is visible, because the progress is undeniable, because the distance between where they stopped and where the climb is continuing grows wider by the day, and the noise is the only response available to someone standing still, watching the distance increase without the capacity to close it. The noise is not aimed at you. The noise is aimed at the mirror, at the version of the climb that reflects back what the stillness chose not to do. And you cannot close that. You cannot silence that with an explanation. You cannot resolve the discomfort of someone watching your movement with anything you say. Only the movement closes it. Only the arrival silences it, not through intention, as the simple and automatic result of the work accumulating into the result that was always the destination. So the question is never how to quiet the noise. The question is what the next hour is aimed at. That is the only question that changes anything real.
What is behind you has already lost. Not eventually, already. The moment the forward direction was chosen and the backward pull was declined, in that specific moment, the loss was decided. Not announced, not confirmed, decided. Because the direction is everything. The one who moves forward with focus intact has already won the only contest that carries any lasting weight. The contest is not between you and the doubt. The contest was never between you and anyone external. The contest is between you and the version of what you are capable of building when nothing goes to the commentary. When the full resource goes to the build, when no second is redirected, when no energy leaks backward. What arrives from that version of the next year, what the compounded, uninterrupted output looks like, what becomes possible when the defending stops, when the explaining ends, when the case is not filed once more, when all of it goes forward. That version is not hypothetical. That version is what is waiting on the other side of the decision to stop giving the noise even one more second of the resource. One more. That is all it takes, and the scale tips permanently. Not dramatically. The work does not announce the shift. The work just builds and builds. And what gets built in the time reclaimed from the commentary starts compounding into something the commentary will not recognize, will not have a category for, will not be able to locate within the frame of what was believed to be possible when the decision to doubt was first made.
The locked gate needs no guard. The boundary that holds does not require ongoing defense. The door that is actually closed does not need to announce its own closure. The closed door is the whole statement. The absence of the response is the whole reply. The silence that follows the noise when the reaction does not come. That silence says everything that every explanation attempted and never fully delivered. It says the access is gone. It says the reach no longer extends this far. It says the version of you that was available to this has been replaced by the version focused entirely on the destination. And the destination is closer than any commentary has calculated, because the calculation was always based on the version of you still spending resources on the noise, still splitting the energy, still fighting the battle with no prize, while the battle that mattered was waiting. That calculation is no longer accurate. The resource is no longer split. The eyes do not turn when the noise rises. The hands do not stop when the commentary arrives. The climb does not pause. Not for volume, not for precision, not for the words that locate the existing doubt.
not for any of it. Because unbothered is the skill now, sharpened by every previous moment of feeling the full weight of the words and choosing the build over the response anyway. Sharpened by the accumulation of decisions that gave the commentary nothing and gave the work everything. Sharpened by the specific and repeated discipline of eyes forward when everything operated to rotate them back. Every one of those decisions compounded into this, into the version that no longer requires effort to decline the reaction, because the declining has become the default, because the forward direction has become the automatic, because the resource flow has been redirected so completely and for so long that backward is no longer a direction the momentum recognizes. Forward, into the spaces too far ahead for the doubt to follow, into the results that speak without a word from you required, into the arrival that was always the destination long before anyone had an opinion about whether it was reachable. It was always reachable. The doubt was never the obstacle. The response to the doubt was the obstacle. And that ends now. Not with a statement delivered to the sources, with a reallocation, silent, total. Every resource that was going backward, forward. The noise of the doubt is still there. It was there before. It will recalibrate and try again. But the door is closed now. The gate is locked. The reaction is gone. And what remains in the space where the defending used to live is the work, uninterrupted, accumulating, arriving. Exactly where it was always pointed. Exactly where the doubt believed it could not reach. Already further than the commentary can see from where it is standing. And moving, still moving, eyes forward, without turning, without slowing, without giving a single second more to anything that is not the destination.